Okay, quick, name the vehicle behind me. Okay, fine, the name's right in the title there, so you can probably guess it. But during this past week, I've had a lot of people confused as to what this is with the big V on the front grille. It is the VinFast VF8, and VinFast is a new company entering the North American automotive market, specifically the electric section, and they hail from Vietnam. They plan to have a full line of EVs in the near future, but this is the first one to hit our shores, the VF8. So we spent a week with it to see if it's fully ready for prime time or if it needs to go back in the oven for a little more baking. I think I got my analogies messed up. Now, as I mentioned, this is the first VinFast on our shores, but it's not the first time we've come across the VF8. About a year ago, a lot of media were flown out to Vietnam to sample a prototype version of the vehicle, and to say things didn't go exactly how VinFast planned would be a big understatement. There were many issues with the vehicle and other annoyances that several members of the media reported on. The good news is VinFast listened. They have updated the car that has come to North America. And I don't mean a little tweak here and there. They've changed so much on the vehicle and things you wouldn't even expect, like updating the window motors so the power windows go up and down better, the software on the infotainment system, the way the battery and the motors work. There's been an extensive amount of changes made for the production version of the VF8, which raises the question, is it ready for prime time? Is it ready to take on the best midsize EVs on the market? Well, that's what we're going to try to find out. Going from a relative unknown to a global competitor in the span of a few years is a big ambition. VinFast isn't a new company. They have made vehicles for their home market, but this is their first attempt to go international. I'm not 100% sold on this style. I think it's the V's that stretch across the front and the rear of the vehicle. I do like the taillights though, and the side profile is pretty nice, and the VF9, which is the next one to come, really looks great, and I hope some of maybe its styling transfers to the VF8 in the future. Size-wise, it's right there with all the key competitors in the midsize segment. Inside, same thing. Space is about what you'd expect from a vehicle competing in this class. So the VF8's the right size for the market, but what about the rest of the numbers? Well, the dual motor makes 402 horsepower, which is actually more power than the Ford Mustang Mach-E Premium Extended Range All-Wheel Drive, or the Volkswagen ID4 Pro All-Wheel Drive, or the Nissan Ariya Evolve Plus All-Wheel Drive. Now, I specifically chose those three vehicles because they all have a starting price before options around the $50,000 to $51,000 mark, with destination charges in the US, or around $60,000 to $63,000 in Canada. The VF8's power advantage, though, does weaken a bit when it comes to torque, as it has 442 pound-feet, which is impressive, but that's right around most competitors, and some have even exceeded it. Same thing with the battery size. This has an 87.7 kilowatt-hour battery, which is bigger than the Volkswagen ID4s, but not as big as the Ford Mustang Mach-Es. The one area that this VinFast really falters, though, is range. It's only rated at 243 miles on a single charge, and that's behind all the competitors mentioned, and significantly so if you're talking the Mustang. So it has a similar size battery pack and about the same amount of power, so what gives? Well, it's weight. This vehicle weighs over 5,700 pounds, and compared to the three vehicles I mentioned, that's some 800 to 900 pounds difference, and that's going to affect acceleration and range. A lot of that has to do with the chassis, and it's a theme that's going to be visited a lot during this review. Besides the more powerful dual motors, the Plus also comes with a lot of other good features, like power seats for both front seat passengers. The driver also has the easy entry and exit. There's a panoramic sunroof, a giant touchscreen in the middle, power liftgate, all the usual safety stuff you'd expect. Just everything that's become pretty much a norm in the segment. The overall design in here seems to take inspiration from a bunch of different automakers. The basic layout of the dash and steering wheel are very Tesla-like, while the buttons in the center console to control the transmission are Honda in feel. It's not just the design that VinFast has taken inspiration from Tesla, it seems. The way a lot of the primary controls are handled is through the steering wheel and the touchscreen. I personally think, though, that VinFast has done it better than Tesla. For features like the lights, the power mirrors, the power telescopic steering wheel, the power panoramic sunroof, and how you set up the gauge cluster, they're all controlled by icon buttons that are always displayed at the left-hand side of the screen with an image of the car beside it to let you know what's going on. There's a sort of video game thumb pad here that has up, down, side to side, and an OK button in the middle, which is much easier to use than the Tesla wheel. I've never liked that. Along the bottom, there's other quick shortcuts like climate control, defrost, getting to the other apps. It's all very easy, and that's where the VinFast system and technology really excels. Is it's very, very intuitive, user-friendly, and just simple to learn. Where it falters is it's missing some features you usually find on vehicles, or they're buried so deep I've just never found them. I mean, there's no AM radio, I know that much for sure. You have to use Alexa if you want to get an AM station, and some of the usual vehicle stat pages are absent. I mean, there's some basic ones under the service section for like tire pressure and battery usage, and then navigation does show nearby chargers, but it just seems like an overly simplistic version of an infotainment system, which honestly might be a good thing for many people. So the tech as it stands is pretty good, and it is an area where VinFast really tried to improve compared to the original prototypes. The rest of the interior, though, it's got a bit of style, but it already looks dated, and some of the materials used feel pretty cheap to the touch. And it's not terrible by any means, but for the price that these EVs are in, it doesn't feel up to that quality. And in fairness to VinFast, we've had similar comments to a lot of the midsize EV SUVs in this class. So let's go back to the drivetrain for a second, because I really just glossed over it earlier. So the optional all-wheel drive version has 402 horsepower and 442 pound-feet of torque. And those are, as I said, pretty competitive numbers, and they're pretty healthy numbers, as EVs are always quite powerful. Now, it doesn't feel as quick as many of its competitors because it's not, and again, that's due to weight. But some have said it doesn't feel like there's 400 horsepower in the vehicle, and I would actually really disagree. I would argue it for sure does. It's just it also has 5,700 plus pounds to haul around. Still, whether in the city, freeway, or highway, hammer down the accelerator and the VF8 gets up and goes. It'll outrun most vehicles on the road. One really strange quirk, though, that I've never really experienced in other EVs is there's a huge delay in pushing down the accelerator and the vehicle actually moving from a dead stop. Now, this may be to compensate for how touchy and instant acceleration can be in EVs, but if that's the case, they've gone too far, and if it's not the case, then I don't know why it's there. But here, let me show you an example. So I've come to a complete stop. When I say go, I'm gonna hit the accelerator and wait to see the delay until the scenery beside me starts to move. Go. See? It's not a huge delay, but every time I accelerate, there's that little half second or so. I mean, I'm pretty much used to it now, but it's just odd. VinFast has done a good job with the brakes. The pedal force is very linear, as is the braking force. There's good initial bite, and then it just kind of grabs on at that same level all the way through. It stops this fairly heavy SUV and a good amount of distance, and they're not gonna say rival a Corvette Z06 or anything, but for a mid-size pedestrian EV SUV, they're more than capable of doing the job. Now we'll move on to the area where the VF8 really does lag behind the competition, and that's the chassis. Honestly, it feels like it's 10 to 15 years old. I don't mean worn out, I just mean sophistication. It bumps a little more over imperfections in the road. There's a little more rebound. You can actually hear suspension or body components kind of clunking or shimmering or rattling over larger road imperfections. It's just not what you expect in the class today. And on a handling standpoint, it's very similar. I mean, it's fully capable of navigating any road at normal speeds, and it will even hold on if you hustle in it a bit. But if you really start pushing it, it's not meant for that. It's a little sloppier than the competitors, steering a little more vague. But again, it's not terrible or unlivable or unsafe or any other exaggerations you may have heard. It's just there are definitely better options out there. I wouldn't expect a manufacturer entering a new segment and a new market at the same time to nail the formula right away. But if you pluck some of the good bits out of this car and put it into a lighter, stronger chassis, it would do wonders for the VF8. There's also some other little things that aren't really a big deal, but just show that there's still a bit of a learning curve ahead of VinFast. One of them is the turn signal. When you turn them on and complete a turn, until the steering wheel is absolutely dead straight, the signal won't turn off. Most other cars have a little bit of play to turn it off, knowing you've completed the turn. And it's a similar story with the parking brake. This is one of those vehicles that auto applies the parking brake when in park, and when you put it in drive will auto release it. I just find it's always very delayed in releasing it, and sometimes it doesn't release it even if I put it in drive. If you're worried about the long-term reliability of a new product from a new manufacturer, VinFast really believes in what they're selling. They offer a 10-year, 120,000 mile or 200,000 kilometer bumper-to-bumper warranty, and the battery, it's also covered for 10 years with unlimited mileage. So back to the original question, is the VinFast VF8 ready to compete against the best midsize EVs in the North American market? Well, probably not quite yet. It does have the styling, and even if I'm not the hugest fan, it's gotten way more compliments than not from passerbys. It's got good technology that a couple patches here and there would make great, and it's got a good drivetrain that, again, with a few tweaks and refinement will be great. The biggest thing it needs to overcome is its current chassis. But remember, this is VinFast's first attempt in our market. Remember when Honda and Toyota first came to North America? Or for the younger folks, when Hyundai or Kia first hit our shores? I have a feeling VinFast could make the same leaps and bounds, and you can't discount its crazy warranty that it comes with, and if you can find an aggressive lease rate, this might be worth consideration.